Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story. It's Tuesday. We're in the book of Micah this week, and I am in this conversation with Jay Rivenbark and Zack Unkenholz. Our reading today was verses 1 through 12 of chapter 3. And it begins by saying, I said, listen, you leaders of Israel, you are supposed to know right from wrong, but you are the very ones who hate good and love evil. You skin my people alive and tear the flesh from their bones. Yes, you eat my people's flesh, strip off their skin, and break their bones. I got a lot of questions about this. You chop them up like meat for the cooking pot, then you beg the Lord to help in times of trouble. Do you really expect him to answer? After all the evil you have done, he won't even look at you. It seems to me, maybe I'm wrong, that a leader who's going to skin you alive and chop you up and eat your flesh is pretty easily identifiable. I don't think that's a trait you can hide. It seems like it.
It's a long time to election time for these folks. You can't get there quick enough.
Of course, this is most likely
symbolic.
Yeah.
Or is it?
I would say it's got to be, mostly.
Yeah, I would think for mostly it is, but also, I mean, keep in mind that these were not necessarily, quote, like we equate leaders in the sense of elected leaders.
Oh, yeah, no, the kings they could do whatever they got ready to.
Yeah.
And there's no doubt that there were some people skinned alive and chopped up and put in a meat pot. And they had human crackling. For those of you who don't know what crackling is, you ever had crackling, Jay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What is it?
Mm-hmm.
It's fried lard.
That's all.
Right.
It's just chunks of.
They take at a hog killing. Of course, you've never been to a hog killing either.
No, I have not. So.
And so they. What are you doing, Jake?
No.
This podcast is going sideways. But
sorry.
Now that we're in in the conversation. So my grandfather raised hogs, and I've seen him kill them. Did you do hog killings?
Yeah, absolutely.
And he'd walk up to the pig with a 22 and
really?
put a bullet in its head, and it fall right over.
Be over with.
And then they string it up, and sometimes if they had a pot big enough, they'd scald the skin off.
I was going to say, you put it in a big old hot vat and then scrape the hair off. And,
and then they hang it up and cut it open. But the lard, so you know what lard is.
Yeah, I do.
Okay?
Yeah.
They basically chop it up chunks, and they'd have at his house they had a big black kettle,
wash pots,
over fire, and they would throw the lard in there, and it cooks it, and you fry it, and it's just.
Every time I think I've heard something very country, something always new surprises me. Just fried lard. That sounds good.
It is good.
Oh gosh, I don't actually think it sounds good.
Lard,
it
is good. No, do you like it, Jay?
It's all right. Yeah, it's got a lot of flavor along with grease and calories and fat. But,
your doctor probably would tell you you don't need lard, but lard's the only way to make biscuits too. By the way,
yes.
Good biscuits.
Because we went to we went to like a Walmart and like a Piggly Wiggly because we were on a trip, and Steve wanted to make biscuits, and he's like, we need lard.
Yeah.
And we go in there
don't make it with Crisco.
We have Crisco.
Don't make it with Crisco.
Crisco's not lard.
It's not lard. No, it's nasty. Man. So, thank you for joining us now.
Where were we?
That's our discussion on Micah chapter 3. But it says, you leaders, you're supposed to know right from wrong. So the question I want to talk about today is, how do you know right from wrong? How do you choose leaders that are able to know the difference? So how do you know right from wrong? And how do you choose leaders that know right from wrong? And why do we get fooled from time to time?
Well, first of all, I'd say I don't think we have the ability to choose leaders that know right from wrong unless we ourselves know right from wrong.
Okay.
I think it starts there. Perhaps being overly simplistic, we're given this gift from God called our conscience that often helps us know right from wrong. Paul even alludes to the fact sometimes we do things that I don't think we actually know are right or wrong until we're involved in it, and then that thing quickens inside of us. We're like, wait a minute, I need to question this, look at this more detail, figure this out. some things we know are right or wrong simply by, quote, the law or instruction from other people that we've been taught that we know. So there are a lot of methods, the Word of God. There are certain things that spells out that we would know are right or wrong. And so there are a multitude of ways that we determine right from wrong.
And when I'm looking to a leader, I'm not just looking for someone who is moral, right? Because just moral could be defined by just the culture in general. It could be defined by what they grew up with, which may not be. To them it's moral, but it may not be biblical. And that's what I'm in a leader. If I'm looking for a leader, I'm looking for someone who, because I think that the Bible is the greatest, book of the law that we have, and you can look to the Bible, and I think someone who is biblically centered, I think, is what, we should be looking for. I think we should be looking for in a leader.
You asked the question, I think part of the question was, how do you know they are? And I think maybe part of your question was, did you ask how we can be fooled or how we can
Well, no,
miss
but
it?
that would be a part
of
would
it.
be
Yeah.
implied, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When it comes to, quote, leaders and leadership, whether it be in the church, whether it be in government, it's a huge responsibility. And I think it takes time sometimes to figure that out, whether people whether they know right or wrong or whether they're willing to live by right or wrong, or perhaps two different things on occasions. When it comes to government, it can be very difficult because if you're only going on sound bites, and what you see and what you hear in that little excerpt, you're like, ooh, that'd be a great person. They're going to make right decisions and avoid wrong decisions, whether it's morality issues, whether it's financial issues, and the list goes on and on. So I think there has to be a lot of effort that goes into trying to understand a person in order to know. The more you know them, the more I think you will get a reflection of who they are and their ability. And even with that, it's easy to be fooled.
What happens when you have, do you want your leaders to be Christians?
If my leader says they're a Christian, they better be living biblically. What I don't like is when someone says they're a Christian, but their life completely, decisions they make or actions they take, I would say, like, directly go against that. That's when I think it's upsetting. I don't think our leaders have to be Christian, but it's interesting looking at the presidents just as like an example of like how like almost every president would say they're Christian, right? You got to swear on the Bible when they're being during the inauguration. Is that what it's called? Oh yeah,
Oath of office.
Yes. And so but it's interesting that, like, I remember when who was that was Mormon very recently against Obama.
Romney.
Mitt Romney.
Mitt Romney, thank you. And there was like big debates even in my church, like, well, he's Mormon, that's not Christian. But I was like, do you think every president actually was Christian? I don't know.
So, all right. So that's a good example. All right, when you're choosing a leader, because I had that debate. Jay was in a room where I was having that debate with somebody the first time he ran.
Mm-hmm.
And McCain ended up being the nominee.
Mm-hmm.
And the argument was, I won't vote for him because he's not a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
But from a morality standpoint, okay, let's back up. What the Mormon church believes and the things that the evangelical church gets so up in arms about. So abortion, homosexuality, family unit. The Mormons are better than the average Christian is. That's the first thing I'd say. And that's a knock against Christians.
Yeah,
it is. When you're choosing a leader, he seemed to have, I don't know how you become, like, Mormonism feels so off, like I don't even know how you go down that path, but lots of people do. But from a right or wrong perspective, his radar's pretty good, right? I mean, I would have said that his radar's
Yeah.
pretty good, probably better than most of them who were professing to be Christians, not just Obama, but even on the other side.
Yeah.
So is Christian the measure, or is fruit the measure when it comes to choosing? In the church, I don't think you got any choice. Like they better be Christian, like But when we're talking politics, is the fruit of their right or wrong choices more important than their profession of faith?
I would say unequivocally yes, because you see it; it's demonstrated. You ask the question, would you rather have a Christian leader? And the answer for me is I'd rather have a genuine Christian leader who lives the life, exemplifies it, and bears the fruit. But I would take a non-professing Christian leader who bears the fruit and has the track record of that. He's not just cleaning up his act, during this election process, but has a long track record of proving that. And I think Mitt Romney would have been a great example of that. I'd much rather prefer that than someone who just professes faith.
Yeah, I would rather you not profess faith
Absolutely.
than
fake it till you make it.
and that's not even the faking it, because like I can think of a couple recently that made some professions, but they looked foolish. And they made everybody else look foolish. I would rather them just say, and I'm a heathen. And the preachers that were around them say they're a heathen. But they got one or two things that are important to us, and we're hanging on instead of trying to prop somebody up with Jesus. I always thought that was a bad move.
I won't disagree with that. Back to the Mitt Romney example, I heard a very, very, at that time, and he still is influential, but at that time in his heyday was extremely influential in the Christian conservative community, and came out and said, I will not vote for him because of that issue. Mm-hmm. And you just threw away every other issue. Like you said, he apparently, best we could tell, had lived out this lifestyle that would be conducive to what most Christians would have an interest in. But because of that, you refuse to. But yet that leaves you with these options. And I think in that situation, I think was a great disservice to the nation, to the Christian community, for somebody of that influence to come out and say, I'm going to single out this one issue, throw out all of this good.
Yeah, because, I mean, looking back on it, let's just take him out of it because I don't want this to be the Mitt Romney podcast.
Is he running again? I've
got some other examples.
He's a senator.
Besides not him. But
He long-term.
In the long run, from a leadership perspective, let's just talk about this from a leadership perspective. Let's forget heaven or hell right this minute. Let's lay that to the side. I would much rather have somebody that walks a pathway and produces fruit that hasn't made the same profession that I have made than to have somebody who has made the profession I have made but doesn't produce fruit or doesn't seem to walk the same pathway I walk.
Oh, absolutely.
100% of the time. And that bothers most Christians.
That's an easy call for me. I mean,
but that bothers most Christians. And when you get leaders that don't know right from wrong, that need discernment, if somebody says, if you tell me I'm a follower of Christ, I expect you to depend on the Holy Spirit, to be led by the Holy Spirit, to be able to pray and ask discernment. But when I look at your life and know you ain't doing that,
that's a problem.
I ain't voting for you, And we prop people up. Well, he says he's a Christian. Well, so what? Where's the fruit? What he just said it's unchristlike. It ain't very Christian.
It's all future fruit.
He's creating a testimony.
That's it.
What were your examples, Zach?
Well, there were two things I was thinking of, just interesting examples. My brother, he worked at a Chick-fil-A, and they had a lot of problems with people stealing money at the Chick-fil-A. I know, of all places. But then they got a manager in there who is a Christian, and just from his leadership, his morals, and some things he implemented, the amount of money that was missing or stolen by staff assumed dropped like it was like 75%. It was like ridiculous how much money they saved. And then the manager gets a bonus when they lose less money. And so he has some incentive there too. But like my brother, was talking about it. He's like, I can knock Christians for whatever, but he's like, but like I'm really like he was like that was something that was pretty amazing that like a leader and because he had good leadership qualities. But he backed up. He had the fruit too, and yes, he's a Christian.
Influenced.
But if he was just a Christian, but he had bad leadership qualities, and it had bad morals, even if it professed it, that would lead to nothing. And then another example I thought of was, I used to work for a Christian organization, and we had a guy coming in who we heard all these great things about, and we kind of had an interview as the staff interviewing kind of our potential future superior. And it was a Christian organization, and the guy was like, he talked about praying to his grandmother, and it was very bizarre. And even like in his past, like he had like confessed some things that were pretty bad that he had not moved on from, and mistakes just in the job, like that. I'm like, how he upset a lot of people, and I was thinking, why would we ever hire this guy? And he was hired. I left like a month later. I was out a month later, but I was like, I told him, I said, did you ask him any questions about his faith? Because that was the first thing I asked him about. And immediately he's like, yeah, I'm a Christian, but like I just have a very close connection with my grandmother, and so I pray to her. I was like, woo, 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 red flags all over the place. And
could you ask that question?
Well, because it's a Christian organization, I feel like I can, right? I got to imagine. Look, we'll at a church, right? When I came here, you guys
but in a church it's different. We're a nonprofit organization that is we're religiously exempt. I wouldn't think the radio's.
So it was K-Love, which is a nonprofit Christian organization as well. And so that's the thing, is that it's large, it's big, but that's why we're hiring him to oversee our 3 New York offices.
Was Elvira on K-Love?
Elvira?
Yeah.
No, what?
Help me out, Daniel.
Is it?
Was she? Do you know? Daniel's
the crazy the lady with. I'm thinking of like Bride of Frankenstein, Elvira. Like
she had a radio program.
No, I don't think so. It's I don't know. Maybe that goes far back. But
okay.
So, anyways, but it was kind of wild. I was like, why would we like? How did he get this far in the interview process? And then they did hire him, and I was like, he's gone now. But yeah, it was.
Was he effective?
I didn't think so. I mean, but from what I've seen and from talking to people that I still know in K-Love, there were some issues.
Let me ask y'all, because we got to close this podcast down.
Yeah,
let me ask you an even more complicated question.
Okay.
Because I think when you're hiring somebody at a radio station or you're voting for president, that's an easy question. If you had to choose as a pastor, you knew what I was going to ask.
I know exactly where you're going.
If you had to choose as a pastor, someone who bore fruit and whose life resembled Jesus, but they had not made a profession of faith, versus somebody who had made a profession of faith, but they did not bear fruit and it did not appear they were walking the path, who would you choose?
I wouldn't hire either one of them.
I was going to say, I'm not going to be the lesser of two evils.
If you had to.
If you had to?
If you had to choose one or the other.
We'll stick with the interim pastor. Like, you would not pick either. I don't think you could pick either. I mean, like, if you had to, if the person's clearly is like, I'm not a Christian, but I want to be your pastor, you could not pick that person.
I didn't say he says I'm not a Christian. I said he just hasn't, you don't know his public profession of faith. Nobody asked me when I came to work here if I was a Christian.
We just assumed you were not. I apologize.
Yeah, that is wild though. It's like you could not pick either.
Do you think there are pastors, effective pastors, who are not saved?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess that. Yeah. I guess.
I didn't say we should hire them. I said, I think they're probably.
I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100% agree with that. And I think there are some saved, ineffective pastors who aren't. Like I tell people, some people say, "Oh, he's such a great guy. He's going to heaven. He is a great guy. He just ain't got no business in that job.
Yeah.
He sucks.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, let's wind this down. Thank y'all for joining us today on One Single Story. Hope you'll be back tomorrow. We're going to continue our conversation around the book of Micah.